welcome to the Naked Product. I think for folks who don't know much about this podcast because it's seemingly new, we created this podcast to evangelize product management in the northern side of the country. In the south, where I've existed for a while, there is still a lot of buzz around product management. Malti, being a senior product leader, would know that. But I think the idea is to basically discuss different topics around product management and AI because a lot has changed in the product space since the advent of generative AI. So keeping that in mind, I thought, who better to call than Malti herself, who's probably doing a lot on the internet space, and everywhere there is Malti. So I just decided to call Malti for an impromptu discussion, and the idea was to basically hear from her because she's had a lot of experience teaching and building the next set of PMs. But before I go there, I think it would be fair to probably ask Malti to speak a little bit about herself as to what her experience has been so far for our viewers who don't seem to know, but I doubt there are very rare breed of folks who don't know her. It's probably the other way around, but please go ahead and introduce yourself a little.
All right. Thank you, Saurabh. That was a really interesting introduction. And I probably want to say maybe you see so much of me on the internet that, I'm in the site, so that triggered that you can call me on the
Absolutely.
podcast. So, a little bit about me. I've been in the industry for about 25 years. Started as a techie, but pretty much 7 years later, I moved into product management. I was, of course, one of those early era of product managers, and I was indeed an accidental PM. So a lot of my experience has been building large scale, mature enterprise products across fintech, across logistics, document sharing, a lot of that. So I've spent a lot of time at SAP, Intuit, EMC, PayPal, Society General. Then last few years, I have been doing a lot of work with in the India startup space, mentoring and coaching startups. So that's what triggered me to embark on my journey of solopreneurship. And last 3.5 years, I'm founder of a company called SparkProd Consulting, where we have basically three pillars. One is consulting with the startups, across different journeys of their products and their life, where I help them build their product strategies, ideate on new products. And I also work with large enterprise organizations, which are especially on this journey of services to product. There is definitely a huge opportunity out there. Uh, so that eventually also led me to my next path of training. So where I'm training with the product managers as well as with aspiring product managers with my interaction in the academia. So I'm a visiting professor, or what it is called as professor of practice at a few B schools. And the last one, as Saurabh has already said, I also host a podcast which has done 35 episodes so far. And it is called as Product Talk with Malti. Still in its initial journey, just 1 year plus. And yeah, I find myself finding a lot of bliss among my community of product managers.
Outstanding. For folks who do not know, I think 10 years back, or maybe 11 years back, sometime in 2014 or 15, when I first spoke to Malti, she was probably planning to get into the entrepreneurial side, right? She was always in the corporate, and probably I think that's when she connected because I was already running my startups. So the
Yeah.
fact that she was asking me for my advice was a very, very overwhelming moment for me. For like a senior leader like her would ask me about my advice. But yeah, from then till now, we've connected in different forums. We were part of different groups and all. We've exchanged a lot of ideas, and I think from then till now, she's had a fabulous journey so far, and I think she's doing exceedingly well as far as the product landscape in India is concerned. I think with the fact that product management is being evangelized properly, almost as good as in the valley. But I think there is a question that comes to everyone's mind when we talk about your journey is that what are the two or three things that shaped your thinking as a product leader, right? I mean, there must have been two or three things or maybe four things. What do you prefer? What are those
Yeah.
two or three things?
Yeah. I think given that it's been about 16, 17 years and I'm still doing product management, that speaks volume that how passionate or how interesting that I find this function, right? I think if I have to say, during different stages of my journey, there were a few things which have kind of shaped my thinking, which has shaped my journey. I think one thing which picked up very early, which is thanks to some of the organizations which I worked, which were extremely customer obsessed. So I think putting in the first principles thinking, not only listening to, I would say, listening to your customers' symptoms, but also observing your customers and translating that to customer empathy. I think that has been one of my key learnings, which even today kind of shapes up my thought process, my decisions, my approach, right? That's number one. Number two, I think another very key learning for me has been that how do you operate in a distributed environment? Because pretty much I have been a remote PM for a very, very long time, right? So, how do I operate in a way where, being empathetic and, decisions are being taken in a consensual format where everybody is kind of is able to voice their opinions, understand each other's point of view. So I think managing distributed teams, that has been my second most important learning in the product space. And the third thing I would say, which has shaped again my journey, is that how do I would say in any organization, not only in product, but culture plays a very, very important role, right? And my experience, I have worked with very large organizations, medium size, and now really the small ones like the startups. So, irrespective of the size, how do you keep people at the center of it and build a very strong product mindset, people first culture, customer first culture? That is something again I have kind of embodied it from my leaders, the managers with whom I've worked, my industry colleagues. I think these are two, three things which have stayed very constant. I have evolved, but they are very core to my way of working.
Right, right. I think one of the things that I have observed, for over 2 decades is that in organizations where you have a very top-down style, right? The product manager does not seem to be in control, right? Because no
Mm.
matter how hard you try to basically translate customer pain points into a feature or a product or whatever, you still are haunted by what the management is going to think, right? I mean, is it going to be aligned with what the management's overall strategy about the organization is? And then as opposed to organizations where like Facebook or Google, where it's a very bottoms up approach where the product manager is probably the CEO or the mini CEO of the company, and it is his duty or her duty to basically ensure that this is the product that's going to deliver value for the customer. So have you worked in both these environments, and if you have, then what are the changes that you've observed in both these different kinds of management structure?
Yeah. See, I think pure play top down approach will definitely not work even in a larger organizations, especially if it is an organization. Thankfully, I've been part of some very, very amazing organizations, which have, as I said earlier, have been extremely customer facing, customer centric, and they have been successful. Like, I mean, you look at companies like SAP, Intuit, DMC, they have done more than 50 plus years, and they are still very, very successful, very innovative organizations. And the reason for that, their success is that they don't work in a top-down approach. But again, they are not purely bottom-up approach. Otherwise, you will not have any kind of synchronization or harmony across so many different, business units within that organization. So
Right.
what I have seen work there is a hybrid approach, where while there is a very clear strategic direction, prioritization from the leadership, which helps us to get the right kind of resources, budgets, and all in place. But at the same time, they take all the efforts where your product managers or your product engineers are constantly listening to the customer support, to the sales, to the customer themselves, so that they are able to bring out the actual problem that the customer is facing. And
Okay.
when you kind of marry the two, I think that's where the magic happens.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah,
That's very
but
good.
yeah, but I have seen also in a smaller setup, in a smaller organization, because there are not so many people who are decision makers, there is typically the idea is to be moved. Because see, also this hybrid approach which I talked about, while it has a lot of goodness, it also comes with its challenges, right? The decision that making doesn't happen so fast. A lot of times you are not able to take move as fast as you would want to. The more iterative you are, the more slows it downs you. So in a smaller setups, while I have seen it helps you to move fast because there's one person who's taking the decision, it helps you move fast, but sometimes it also becomes very narrowly focused,
Right.
right? So I think both of them has their pros and cons depending upon the stage of the organization where it is, right? But I think organizations need to transform themselves when they kind of start scaling up, when they start getting into early growth or late growth phases, because whatever solved for you in a innovate, introduction phase is not going to solve for in your early growth or late growth phase. So while you're scaling up, constantly evolving your processes, ways of working is extremely important. So I have seen the goodness, but both of them comes with their own. It's a trade-off that you kind of look at in order to be able to stay relevant and to be able to move fast.
But for folks who don't know me very well, I think one of the things that I also picked up from Malti is the fact that for the last 10 years or something, every time I was there on camera, I would have a very serious dead face, right? So the fact that she smiles and laughs in her videos, almost as if a normal conversation is going on, is something I've really picked up from her. So I try my level best, although I don't look good when I smile. But that doesn't, that doesn't really bother me. But moving on to the next question, I think in your career journey, you from an IC role, you basically migrated to becoming a leader and then managing teams and stuff like that, right? So would you define that transition that happens? Because suddenly, you're probably managing as an individual contributor, you're managing one project or one feature or something like that. And maybe in the next 2 years, you're probably heading a team of, let's say, 10 people, 15 people.
Yeah.
How did you transition and how difficult is it for folks who want to get into that space, right?
Yeah. Interestingly, Saurabh, despite the fact that you know how collaboratively I work and how much I enjoy being in the middle of people, I actually stayed an IC for the longest time possible, right? I actually refused opportunities. I kind of pushed it back because I always loved to be a very hands-on product manager, right? Till I became a principal product manager. And after that, my manager said, it is very difficult for me to put together your promotion case and all that. You have to start taking team ownership. Till the time I actually did that. And that was purely a personal choice, right? Because I believed that I really want to be very hands-on, right? Now, but coming back to your question, right? I think there is, for anybody who is a first time manager, there is always a learning curve which is there, right? Because when you have to just manage yourself versus when you have to manage a bunch of people who all come with their own, strengths and weaknesses, their own aspirations and their own, point of views, it is very important that while you are kind of working towards the organization strategy goals, you are also responsible for their careers now,
Right.
right? So the decision making, how do you make them feel part of the team? Because that cohesion within the team is extremely, extremely important,
Yeah.
right? So I actually, again, I would say one of a few things which really worked, and that is what I was kind of earlier referring to, right? That as an organization scale, see, when you are in an introduction phase, you probably have like the founder and you have like maybe one product manager. But when you start scaling up, you start building a team. You start to have people from different diversities. You start to have people different functions. You start having analysts, designers. So at one point of time, in one of the companies where I worked, I had 6 product managers across, principal, senior, APM, and then I had data analysts reporting into me. I had one designer. So it was a very diverse set of team. So first of all, having some kind of a clear roles and responsibility is very, very important because that tells kind of a scope within which that person has to operate.
Right.
You need to define how the decisions are going to be taken. What kind of a data are you kind of looking at? But at the same time, while you're kind of putting in some these processes, you can't make it like extremely rigid. There has to be some kind of a empowerment. There has to be some kind of a independence that people can take their own decisions. People can make mistakes. So
So,
that freedom to learn, freedom to make mistakes and learn from there and start all over again. I think that has to be set. And again, what helped me when I kind of made that transition was some of the trainings, like, for a first time manager, support from my leaders, wherever I was struggling to take a decision, how to handle a difficult conversation, how to, engage with a not so engaged employee within my team. I think I kind of always asked for help, right? So I think when somebody is making this kind of a decision, transition, they need to be very, very mindful. They should be conscious about it. It is okay to ask for help. It is okay to go through some trainings. It is okay to have mentors who can guide you how to navigate through these different things. And then you kind of build your own style,
Right.
right? But I think the only thing I would say is that don't treat your team like resources. They are just like your family at work, right? So that respect and giving them that freedom to make their choices, as long as they have their arguments, point of view, data, gut backing it up, should be there.
Right, right. Now, adding to that specific question, I've worked lately with a lot of hyper growth startups, right? And one thing that I've seen is that, it's like a very connected organism where all these different teams work together in cohesion,
Hmm.
right? And I've observed a lot of ego clashes, between a lot of teams, right? So,
Hmm.
have you had the opportunity, or let's say the missed opportunity, to witness one of these? And if you did, then what was the method of conflict resolution, right, that you basically adopted to basically resolve this particular issue? Because it happens a lot in these teams which are under high pressure to deliver, right?
Correct, correct. So it really did not happen within my team or somebody reporting to me, but it happened to me with in one of the organizations where I worked with a peer, right? And see, one of the challenges when you're working with a very cross-functional kind uh, responsibilities, our own priorities, right? That is number one. Number two, because we have looked at a certain, we all carry our baggages, we all carry our biases, right? So the way we approach things, we make decisions are very different. So it has happened with me a couple of times in a couple of organizations, and I think going back to when I spoke about empathy. So for me, when I speak about empathy, it is not only the customer empathy, but it is also my colleague, empathy, people around me in general. So why somebody is taking, so I have always been somebody who doesn't believe in conflicts. I try to avoid conflicts. Of course, when there is a difficult conversation that needs to happen, it needs to happen on the right time so that you are able to move forward, right? But I'm somebody who is has kind of over the years developed my own style where I kind of navigate around conflicts fairly easily now, right? But the way I would have approached it is number one, I try to go deep into understanding why is this person responding the way they are, right? If I'm not able to directly resolve the conflict, resolve the issues, then I usually try to approach a leader or like a third party who could basically enable the conversations better, right?
Right,
And sometimes you probably don't have so much of time to try these different things. I think at that time, the only thing that seems to work is a direct conversation
right,
saying that it is not about us, it is about the organizations, it is about the timely decision that we have to take. Let's kind of keep our own aspects on a side and let's have this conversation, right?
right.
Sometimes it doesn't work because you cannot expect just because you are being much more open minded, the person on the other side is also open minded, right? So most of the time, Saurabh, it requires work. It requires a third party. It might require intervention from your manager. In one case, I approached my manager approached the person's manager, and then that person kind of spoke to the team member.
Right.
So it kind of it requires work. But I think as long as you are having an open mindset, you are kind of flexible, you want to make things move, you will figure out ways.
All right, awesome. Now thinking that, assuming that 2025 is the silver jubilee of Malfi's career, assuming that
It
she
is.
started in 2000 sometime.
Correct.
If you were to rewrite the job description of a product manager in today's world, like in
Hmm.
2025, what are those fundamental differences you would encounter, or how different would it be from the JD of a product manager, let's say 10 years back in 2015?
Yeah. One thing which I'm really jay about, Saurabh, is that today's product manager is having a lot more fun because they are actually able to translate just their initial ideas into a, like a tangible product in a few hours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because for me, I would use like pen and paper, or I don't know, maybe you have used balsamic. I have used it
Balsamic
so,
and
yeah, so
whatever.
extensively. Yeah. So I think one thing which I see fundamentally, one of the key differences between a product manager when I started versus now is that a much more emphasized operator role, right? You should be somebody who has to be builder by heart, not wait for somebody, to translate your requirements to somebody to try it out. You already lost the time there. I think that is one fundamental difference. The second thing from where we started, right? We all, as I said, I have been a remote PM for a long. I mean, I used to use WebEx in my era. Hardly anybody would, so many people would come on video conferencing, very patchy Wi-Fi, network, internet, and all that. Not as, this thing
No, no,
sophisticated
I
as
was from SAP, so I remember Webek.
exactly, right? So I think they have the power of these tools, these technologies. So I think they are far more better in terms of the ability to connect where their actual end users, where their customers are, irrespective of the location. So that is another fundamental difference. So leverage that. Make sure that you're talking to your users. That's like the second. The third part, fundamentally, what has changed between 15 years back and now is the data. For me, probably the ratio of data versus gut was like maybe like 60-40,
Right,
right? I mean, the only way I would get to know about my users were through those support tickets or
right,
any NPS surveys
right,
or maybe any qualitative data that they would share with us during interviews, right? And that was reason I ended up doing a lot more interviews. When I became a product manager, I would burn the midnight oil a lot more than anybody else. But today, thankfully, there are so many tools, there are so much of data that you can literally, draw the journey, exactly what your user is thinking, feeling. So I think these are some basic differences that I would say where, knowing about your user is far more easier, communicating with your users is far more easier. The ability to be able to translate your ideas into something very tangible is far more easier, but of course, that also comes with the complexities, right? Psychologically, your users have also moved on, they have also evolved, right? So their needs are also constantly changing. That becomes an
right.
even more challenge. Our attention span has gone down
Yeah, drastically.
tremendously, right? So we have to constantly do something new. This thing. So I think those are some new challenges, but those are some fundamental differences that I can see between then and now.
Right. So Gail Lackman McDowell wrote a book called Cracking the PM Interview. Probably it's been a decade or so, I guess.
Correct, correct, correct.
And she spoke about a bunch of skills that a PM needs to have in order to basically work as a PM. But
Mm,
between then and now, a lot has changed, right? At least in the
correct.
last 3 years, there's been an exponential jump in terms of generative AI and all. So, what are those skills that have turned obsolete over the last 5 to 8 years? Let me say 5 years because Gen AI is almost like a 3-year-old affair. So, in
Yeah.
your opinion, what are those skills that were really valued back then are no longer dated or are no longer active or no longer valued anymore?
Yeah. See, I think one of the things which is happening as we speak is that, for example, I remember when I wrote my first PRD, it took me 3 months. I used to follow waterfall methodology. I took 3 months to write one 60-page PRD, which 30-40% changed after I published it. Okay. So I think that is something which is, I can see very fast going away, where people are constantly brainstorming, thinking along with the technology, right? I think that is one skill which is kind of evolving because now it is more about build than, first it used to be think, write, build, but now it is about think, and build,
Right.
right? So I think that is one thing which has, I'll not say completely obsolete because I still believe writing gives me clarity, but maybe it is because just the way I have kind of grown up, but maybe in the future human evolution happens, maybe it will become no more relevant, right? So I think that is one thing which is definitely going obsolete. The second thing which I also see, for example, one of the things we even like in even now in many organizations is the agile way of working, right? I think we all have beaten up this lean product management and agile ways of working to death, right? I would say that the new ways of working are emerging. As of today, if you and I talk, Saurabh, it is more happening in the 0 to 1 space where you're quickly translating prototype MVP. But I wouldn't be surprised that in the next couple of years, this will kind of go to 1 to 10, 10 to 100 journey. The fundamental way of product development is going to evolve big time,
Right.
right? So this agile methodology, writing user stories, those kind of things will evolve because already who is writing user story? They are still giving it to ChatGPT and that is writing,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
So I think that is another part. The third part, for example, testing, right? For example, for product managers, it was very important. I mean, even today, if you ask me, the more you are thinking to be able to think holistically, edge use cases is very, very core to the product manager. But I think there are new nuances now emerging in because the metrics that applied for a, like a traditional non-AI product versus the new breed of AI products or the SaaS AI products kind of a thing that we are looking at, the metrics are very different. So
Right.
that means the way you need to think through about the evaluations, the outcomes, the outputs have also evolved, right? So the that aspect, so that means the way you are thinking about your testing will also evolve big time. So there are ways that these are like completely transforming. The other thing which again I would think is that, um, for example, I have worked in a lot of product discovery projects, right, for 0 to 1. I would spend a lot of time with our user researcher to derive insights out of so much of data that we are sitting on it, the VOC data and all that. I think that aspect again of, manually going through all that and all that, I think that is also something which we have seen a huge automation, a huge shift. Today, all you need to do is dump it everything into Miro or a Dovetail and it kind of spawns up the insights, the trends, the graphs,
Right.
right? So these are fundamental ways which are very core day to day how a product manager works on. So these are some of the things which is obsolete. I actually want to call out, and I spoke about the evolution, but there are some new aspects, right? So for example, I have worked in regulatory environment all the time.
Right.
So legal compliance, they are like, they have been very, very integral part of my journey. But today, I also feel that with the new age products that we are building, especially AI products that we are building, there is a lot more sense of ownership that a product manager needs to demonstrate, especially building ethical, are you doing things responsibly? Is consciously it is looking at, are you building the right kind of guardrails? What are these guardrails?
Right.
Can this be broken? I think a product bit thinking about sustainability, right? Can you optimize this so that your product is more sustainable? I think these are some new muscles that a product manager needs to develop, which was definitely not there, let's say, even 5, 6 years back.
Right. 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 So in
So, yeah.
in your journey, I mean, just to continue the same question, extension to the question is that in the last so many years, when I think about product management, I think there are also waves in which the product management role itself has evolved. Right. I mean, you started with enterprise level product management in SAP and these organizations, B2B organizations, mostly. And then you sort of had this. Everybody was embracing agile back in 2011, if I may. In SAP, I was in SAP at that time. I think everybody was going towards more agile and Scrum and all that. And then I think the lean thing happened, and then everybody migrated to the lean way of startups and how we can basically optimize on that. And from then till now, where Brian Chesky says that you only need a product marketing manager like an Apple, and he is able to do a lot of things because these are seemingly connected, organizations. They're not, they should not work in silos. And now you are talking about a stage where somebody like Andrew Angie says that now you need a PM only for zero point 0.5 engineers. Of course, that's a very rhetorical statement to make, but the question over here is that how do you see the relationship? Because product manager is a guy who's supposed to do everything. He's supposed to interact with the data science guy and know, well enough data science or, analytics himself. He's supposed to know design also. He's supposed to know the business side of things also. He's supposed to sketch out everything. So in a way, he is basically the orchestrator of a lot of different things happening around the product management discipline per se.
Correct.
It's not been clearly defined at all, right? I mean,
Right.
so how have these disciplines evolved so far, along with the product management discipline per se? When I talk about this, when I talk about design, when I talk about engineering, when I talk about analytics, and a lot of other things that revolves around a product manager. Have you
Yeah.
seen these things evolving over?
No, no, you're right. I mean, see, I've worked in 5, 6 different organizations, and if you ask me, um, our roles and responsibility, our organizational design, our positioning within the teams was very different in pretty much every organization. In one of the organization, my boss was reporting into the VP of engineering.
Right, right,
Right. In another organization, we had a very like a shared services kind of thing where we were all rolling up to the CPO.
right,
Right.
right,
In another organizations, we were all at one part of after a certain part marketing product were all reporting into the business head. So it's kind of very very contextual to the industry you're operating. The I would also say even the product maturity of that particular organizations, right? Because there are organizations which are highly matured in terms of their processes, in terms of their culture. So you are right. I mean, it has evolved. There used to be a time where there were very distinct roles of a product owner and an on-site product manager, right? I see even today in a lot of GCCs, probably it continues to operate, but I think a lot of GCCs have also moved up the value chain, so they have a larger, more pie of work or a sense of ownership in terms of the ownership of the product itself. And with a lot of startups ecosystem in India, this distinction between product owner and product manager has gone kind of further blurred, right? So I think absolutely, as you said, a product manager's role has been more like water. It just takes the shape of
yeah,
whichever
yeah,
organization it is
this way,
part of. And the way I see is that it will continue to remain as much fluid, sort of as we move forward, right? Because we are seeing that, for example, very interestingly, I was talking to one person in one of the startups, and he said that today, for example, prompt engineering is one of the very key skills that my product managers need to have. Because sharper their product prompts are, the likelihood that they will be able to get a better result is also high. And
right,
that goes in terms of they are defining a conversational agent, or they are defining. So the skill part which you were asking earlier, that is also evolving.
right,
So we have already seen there are some of the startups in the last 2 years where they don't have a product manager, they only have engineers. We
right,
have seen companies which have gone completely lean. In fact, very recently, I don't know where I read that. Earlier, when I was working as a product manager, the ratio used to be one product manager to two scrum teams, especially at an SPM level.
right,
But today, what I hear is that it is pretty much, like three scrum teams, or maybe sometimes even four scrum teams to one product manager, right? The reason being that with all this vibe coding and all that, the velocity at which the engineering teams are now churning out their deliverables is like amazing. They all have gone like 2x 3x,
right, right,
right? So that means if you are a product manager, you cannot become a bottleneck for your teams to be able to move forward, right? So you also need to be constantly adapting these AI tools so that you are turning around your deliverables, right? So I would see that the role of a product manager continues to evolve, but at the same time I also feel that we have to shed some of the strong muscles that we have to embrace new skills. But I think from a strategic perspective, we continue to play a very, very significant role, because we continue to still sit at this cusp of, business and tech. And if you ask me today, I feel a product manager needs to be all the more technical, because only then you are able to talk to these new set of stakeholders, who is your ML engineers, your data scientists, to be able to really talk in their language,
right.
right? So I do see that it continues to evolve.
So interestingly, like a decade back, or maybe more than a decade back, there's a book that came out which was called "The Inmates Are Running the Asylum," right?
Yes, yes, I've read the
And
book.
it spoke about the fact that why are product managers required, right? I mean, because everything was tech powered, so developers had
Correct.
the power to create products, and they could just create a product, and the sales team would go ahead and sell it out and all that. But that propagated a school of thought that developers really don't understand what the customer needs, right? There
Hmm.
has to be. There was also a movie called Office Space. One point in time when I was a kid back in '90s, we spoke about the role of a product manager in a more
Okay.
satirical way. But I think that's when the world noticed that yes, product management and product managers are required. These are guys who ultimately understand the customer pain points, and
Hmm.
they are the guys who decide what are the things that we should provide as a value proposition to the specific customer. And the
Hmm.
engineering had to translate it, right?
Correct.
Now, almost 15 years later, we are now at a stage when people are talking, in the mainstream conversation revolves around that, hey, what is the management role dead? Is the product manager's role dead? Are we going to have like engineers doing everything? Because now with the success of outliers like Cursor and with Surf and a lot of other companies, they're saying engineers have the capability to understand the market, which I don't agree with, right? As much as it is important for product managers to have technical skills, I don't agree with the statement that engineers understand the customers very well as much as
Mm,
product managers do.
I
So this
agree.
role shall remain. Uh, Obviously, the shape and form of the role will change. There will be different things. But what would you, if I were to ask you to predict the product manager's role, say 5 years down the line, what would you see the product manager doing in the next 5 years? Let's say 5 years down the line.
Yeah, I think nowadays 5-year horizon seems to be too long to
Too
predict
long. Yeah,
anything.
I know. Let's take a 2 year horizon. Right.
Yeah. So as I was saying earlier, I think so I completely agree with you because I think every role has a charm and there are certain skills which are required. And that is why, for example, one of the most important skills that I rate for a product manager is a communication skill.
Right.
Whereas if you talk to most of the techies, hardcore techies, architects, or developers, they don't like to talk. They like to focus on their work. For them, their attention to the details, that is their strength. They love designing, building things. But, again, it's like we are now living in a very, very connected world. So it cannot be only in the gambit of the, product manager's responsibility to translate the product requirement to the engineers. I
Right.
would say engineers still definitely need to have customer empathy. In fact, I don't know if I have shared this with you earlier, Saurabh. In one of the companies where I worked, in every sprint retro meeting, it was mandatory for all of us, the engineers, the QA people, the product managers, Scrum Master, to listen into customer calls. We will play those recordings, which our customer support team has had with the customer, so
Right.
that everybody is hearing it firsthand.
Right. Right.
Right? I don't own, I'm a customer advocate. I don't own what the customer is saying. Right? So I would say empathy has to become everybody's job, everybody's function. But how product manager will change, I think we will continue to be the strategist at the forefront of what product needs to be built, how it needs to be built. Maybe the ways of doing it might evolve. I don't know if we still call, maybe we will now call it as more product builder rather than manager. I actually find it a little funny. Why are we even called manager jabki we have no power? All these feel nice words like mini CEO and all that. It is all, if you ask me, it's all crap. Right? So I think people in the future, the product managers I see is people who come with a very, very high operator mindset. People who are ready, product managers will have to start building it up. Maybe sometimes I would say maybe in a 0 to 1 stage, end to end. Um, but I would still say there has to be a role which understand why are we building this, what problem are we solving this, how will I make money with this, how will I scale this, right?
Yeah.
And that role, whether it is called product manager, business manager, product builder, whatever it is called,
Right.
that layer will be there.
Right. 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 So there was a conversation that involved us in one of the NASPOM groups some years back, right? I think the idea was that there were folks who came from a school of thought that said that only engineers and MBAs need to become product managers, and I think you and I and a lot of other folks disagreed with them, and we said that product management is not the cultural capital of engineers and MBAs, right? I mean, even the guys from fine arts can do a fabulous job being a product manager because all you need is
Correct.
empathy, right? On the empathy part, a lot has changed. So one of my professors, Brené Brown, he talks about empathy. I think the global authority on empathy, and she says that I think in today's world we lack empathy because most people do not understand what the meaning of empathy is, right? So most people have a very casual reaction to somebody's pain point or whatever.
Correct.
Uh, so product managers supposedly come with that level of empathy. So I mean, adding to your point, I doubt if engineering staff will have that level of empathy to understand, because all that has happened is that the productivity has basically increased, right? I mean, you're now more productive. There is a layer of efficiency that has been added. So, so because of which the time to development has reduced drastically. But that does not make the role obsolete. I think
Correct.
that, I mean, the level of empathy you have, nobody can replace that, right? I mean, that's something that's your forte. So that's fair. But now discussing on the part in with the advent of Gen AI, right, and the hype going all high, and we are on different groups and we keep talking about, there's a lot of fight to and fro on Gen AI and all. But what do you see has changed, right, in terms of the conversations, in terms of the stuff that you see and hear all around you? What has changed in the last 3 years that you're seemingly witnessing?
Yeah. I think first of all, there is like there is that fundamental feeling of train chhoot rahi hai
FOMO.
with everybody. There
Yeah.
is a lot of FOMO,
Mm.
right? Especially the minute somebody said that today I made an agent or today I did this, and suddenly people are like, all pile up on that. Okay, tell us, how did you do it? We all are attending a variety, I mean, a variety of events or knowledge sessions and all that, because I think this is a time when the technology is evolving very, very fast. Before the dust settles on the previous announcement, there is already something coming up on the next day, next week, right? So it is absolutely okay to have this kind of a FOMO, uneasiness, because only that will push you to learn, that will push you to move forward, right? And that is exactly also happening in a variety of forums that you and I are there, and where which I see around me.
Right.
So that is there. Now, I would still say that there is a little bit of hype over there, because one needs to, for any kind of deep impact, one needs to look at these large or very large enterprise organizations in terms of what have changed, right? And believe me, for these kind of giant elephants, it takes a lot of effort for them to move from the ways of working of A to ways of working of B. So today I would say, I think organizations are kind of opening up for a lot of experimentation, but at least in a very large organization, Saurabh, it is still the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
So if you ask me, even in the next 5 years, you and I were talking about in the previous question for 5 years, right? Maybe even at least another 2.5 years, the role of a product manager may not even actually change at all in some of these large organizations, because they have a huge run the business. And unless something is proven, they will not bring these kind of huge transformative changes in their ways of working. So I think, probably I will see this change of the ways product managers work, the ways of working, the nature of products that they are building, the tools that they are using. There is a lot of this thing which is happening in probably the periphery of these bigger organizations, or maybe and of course a lot more adopted in smaller organizations, startups, more the digital native organizations, the big techs and all that. So that is where the massive change, as we talk with Gen AI and all, where we can actually see the differences that they are able to bring it up, right? But I think even in large enterprise organization, this change is going to be slow, which is the right thing, because building something for an enterprise grade is not same as building it for 100 customers,
Absolutely.
right? So I see there is a lot of hype, there is a lot of FOMO. In a few cases, like for example, conversational agents and conversational bots, it is fairly, I think kind of grown. There is a little bit of maturity, but then there are a lot of technologies which are in the introduction phase of this product adoption curve, right? So some of them will survive. Yesterday, I was talking to one of the startups, and this lady has entire tech stack where she's trying to combine blockchain and AI, and she's already talking about quantum technologies and all that. So I think one good thing which probably AI has done is that made organization a little bit more open, a little bit more experimental. I think that's a very good point. But for that to become the norm, I think we are still far, far for that.
Right. I think also the fact that I think so there are different categories of the utilization or consumption of AI. One category would be that organizations adopt AI They become an AI first organization. They start using AI tools. Product
Correct.
managers start AI tools and all that. That's one way of consuming. The other part is that the products that organizations make seem to have an AI layer that
Mm.
makes it efficient or basically enhances the user experience for the customer. So that is the two
Correct.
seemingly visible categories of user experience. But I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and we had a very deep discussion on this. So a lot of folks who were basically doing their PhDs, right? Let's say in machine learning or AI, or maybe they were there in the masters, and they were probably learning about these models and supervised learning and all those things, right? The moment this generative AI boom happened, it made more sense for them to understand because it went in alignment with what they were. But having
Correct.
said that, there is also a large number of people who were not doing that, who were doing their jobs and they were doing it fairly good, right? Let's talk about a lot of product managers, senior product managers, principal product managers. And suddenly this boom happened, right? And then this paper came that, and a lot of product managers then come back and told me that, Saurabh, I read the paper, but I don't understand it. There's a lot of mathematics inside the paper which I don't get. So I have to put it, in Chat GPT, and it again explains me something. But that also I don't get because I don't have that mathematical background in machine learning, which is fair, which is very fair point to say. So now, because of this, a lot of product managers have become worried and scared that if they are not able to upskill themselves in the right way, they might not be an asset to the organization anymore, and there could be a chance that their jobs might not be there.
Mm.
And that is haunting a lot of product managers lately. So you, as somebody who's seen the different technical technology waves hit us through the last 2 decades, I think, what do you see as a solution to this particular problem, this predicament that these product managers are facing? Because they don't really understand the tech part because they'll have to again spend like a year or something getting into software engineering, getting into the math and stuff like the math. So there is a math, then there are algorithms, and then there is a model, and then the model needs to be trained and stuff like that. A lot of these things do not make sense to me. To be very frank, 3 years back, none of it made any sense to me.
Mm.
Now it makes at least 20% sense because now I'm reading constantly. So it makes at least 10-20% sense. So I know. Although
Mm.
I cannot call myself a thorough techie at this point in time, but yeah, I understand a little bit. So what do you think is the way out of this so-called predicament which is surrounding product
Yeah.
managers for the last 1 year or so?
Yeah. No, that's a very fair point. And in fact, I probably want to add another angle to it. One of the things, because I teach this course on AI product management, right?
Right.
There is a different aspect which I have seen as exactly you were saying. I see now a lot of data engineers or ML engineers wanting to become product managers because they say that, you know what, I understand the technology part of it. And
Hmm.
now, if I can understand more the business part of it, I have an advantage over the non AI product managers, non ML,
Absolutely.
techie product managers. So I get the best of both worlds. So that's another thing which I have seen.
Right.
There's a reverse osmosis which is happening.
Right. Right.
Now, see, again, I think in the light of any such kind of a disruption that happens, which kind of takes everybody by storm, I think people getting worried and trying to figure out what does it mean for me is a very, very valid question. Because only when they ask such kind of questions, they will start looking for solutions. They will at least start searching for what they can do. So again, I mean, people who become core technologists, as you said, they have PhDs, they have spent years trying to decode that, trying to build that. So, and I mean, nobody can do that in a year or 2 years, right? And I don't even think they should do that. So, I think I will go back to some fundamental principles over here. Because for anybody to succeed, you can never make your weakness as your strength. But what you can do is that you can further strengthen your strength, see what could be some of the transferable skills that you can get from there for you to succeed in this kind of a transformative era, right? And because I also coach a lot of people, and this is a similar kind of a question. There are people who are in operations, sales. They are trying to figure out, okay, with AI coming in, maybe my job is going to become redundant. What does it mean for me?
Yeah.
So it's not only PMs, pretty much every function is kind of very worried about it. But I think the good news is that while some functions are becoming obsolete, there are brand new functions coming in,
Right. Right.
right? So I think the only thing sort of one needs to do here is that do a little bit of reflection, say that, hey, with so many years of work or study, whatever I have done, what are my core strengths? What have I built upon? How can I make this transferable in the coming opportunities? And the only way you can start seeing this career mapping in the emerging space is by continuously learning.
Right.
Right now, that doesn't mean you go and sign up for a ML course. Maybe good, because just because by the virtue of attending that session, you might kind of just pick up some words. You may start questioning what it is mean. You don't have to get 100% of it. Even today, right? Even though I teach a AIPM course, I don't completely understand, let's say, how does a decision tree exactly works, or let's say how does a CNN exactly work, because there are multiple layers to it.
Right. Right.
But I get the gist of it. I
Yeah.
get understand ki, okay, what exactly does it do under the hood, so that what kind of outcomes can come, and what happens when it is not doing right, what could be some of the non-right things that happen. So if I'm able to kind of get a gist of it, I think you are good. So what I would say, just to kind of summarize, Saurabh, is that you cannot make your weakness as your strength. So double down on your strength. Look at what watch out for your transferable skill. Please, please, please be ready to unlearn as much as you are learning. Never lose the habit of learning. Stay curious, because only when you're curious, you're going to be, talking to others. Feel free to ask others what they are doing, right? And I think if you are in that mode, you will sail through it.
It's very it's very interesting that somebody yesterday spoke with said the same thing, that in today's world you should probably be ready to unlearn more than you learn,
Correct.
because it's changing rapidly,
Exactly.
right? And I think one of the questions that I would definitely want you to answer is that one of the most badly abused words globally is strategy. Everyone
Is
is strategy. Everyone uses it. Nobody understands it, but even then, it's being used widely across the spectrum. So over the years, different models came to tap product strategy. Right, there was a Kano's model that came, and then I think Ravi Mehta, for the benefit of humanity, came up with this product strategy stack. We call.
correct.
But now, with the advent of generative AI and the entire product development, basically sitting on top of a model as a wrapper or a native AI agent or whatever, I think now we are talking about a very different kind of product strategy, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
because now you're not only training a model or building a model, you're building a wrapper, you're building a front end, you're also building an agent, an orchestration layer inside the agent, and a lot of other things that you're building.
Correct.
So, in lieu of all of this, right, how would you describe product strategy? And for a product manager adapting to this new environment, what kind of mental model should they follow to create a product strategy for an AI product?
Mm. Now I think that's a fantastic question, and you're absolutely right. We need a very new way, a new outlook to look at the problems now, right? I mean, just because, as you said, the product development life cycle between a non-AI product and AI product is very, very different. Yeah, the metrics, the outcomes that we are talking, the data that is needed is fairly different. So
Right,
I think the for me, I feel now when somebody is defining an AI first strategy, there are some very critical lens that they need to apply, which starts from the very fundamental question: do you really need AI for solving this problem? Because we really need to understand AI is super expensive, right? So there are a few questions which I ask when somebody is down looking at an AI first strategy. Number one is, do you really need AI? Number two, the technology which you're looking to leverage. For example, OCR solution couple of decades back was far more immature, or decade back was far more immature where it is today.
yeah,
We are still in the early stages of voice to voice conversations, right? So you need to look at how mature is that technology, right? That's number two. And for this, of course, you look at your competitors, you look at the technology landscape, you look at that. The third thing I would say is that what is the cost of the risk of doing things wrong? What happens when you're trying to do it goes wrong? If the cost of the error is super high, please don't go for AI. That means you really need a human in the loop,
right, right, right,
right? That's the third thing. The fourth thing I would say is that um, whatever you are building today, right? can it be commoditized? Let's say a big tech comes in tomorrow, because I've personally seen there have been people who built these products, and all it took Google was to just spin out one thing, and
Yeah.
suddenly their product became obsolete,
Right.
right? So, what is your moat?
Right.
Is your moat your data? Is your moat your process? Is it distribution? Is it, whatever is your moat? So I think we need to double down on that aspect of what is your moat, because everybody has access to API, OpenAI APIs these days,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And the last thing I would say is that I think we still underplay data a lot today. I think we really need to have a better understanding of our data strategy. Because, for example, in one of the projects that I was working on, we said, oh, we will be able to do this in 3 months. And 1.5 months later, we realized that our data was messed up. It took us another 6 months to,
Clean the
you
data.
know, correct the data. So how does the data landscape looks like for the product that you're looking to build? Do you have it enough? Is it in a good quality? Do you have enough data? Do you need to procure the data? Do you need to what kind of a, let's say, I mean, it's not about you building the model. It's about if something is available, can you just leverage that, fine tune that? So I think that an eye for that data and model evaluation, these are some new skills that a product manager needs to have, and these are some important questions to ask as you build your AI first strategy.
Superb. Superb. I think that was something that I wanted to personally hear. But having said that, another thing that's been bugging me more as an entrepreneur, and I think you also kind of face the same problem. And I think for the benefit of the masses, let's just talk about it. It's a much discussed topic around the web, and yet nobody's talking about it. But how does one crack distribution? I've tried very hard to understand this. I've read 1,000 books, and I have personally tried out 1,000 things. But in this AI specific world, and even before this, right, it was very hard to crack distribution, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you could release a consumer product and wait for ages, and nobody would come to you. And then suddenly you did something which you did not even understand or know. And suddenly you would probably explode, growth would explode, everybody would come down. And I personally witnessed in one of the startups that I ran with a fluke move I made, which, and it turned out to be really fruitful for us. So before the AI world, what has been your experience with cracking distribution, which is seemingly the most difficult process of the new
Hmm.
product? And in the post AI world, after generative AI came into being, what have you seen? How have you seen the distribution process changing from what it was to what it is now? How are
Yeah.
companies cracking the distribution part now?
Yeah. No, I think that still remains a $1 million question, right? I mean, how does one crack distribution? And I think, as you said, sometimes it is just the fluke. You would have not even thought about it and it works.
Yeah.
So I think one key aspect, and I have seen this kind of blowing up big from, non-traditional, especially with AI products, is I think experimentation, the speed at which you are able to experiment, right? Now with so much of AI tools happening and all that, and also awareness, internet, smartphones, this has given the power to the B2C to be able to get access to it and to be able to experiment. So I think the whole appetite of organizations being able to experiment has gone big time. So that I would say is one of the fundamental reasons that why we see that a lot more failed products maybe, but it's good. At least early you are able to figure out that what is working, what is not working,
Yeah.
right? And I think the only way sort of, um, for example, if you look at Bombay Shaving Company, right? I think what innovative thought that Shantanu Deshpande had, that he started with his own podcast, so that it kind of gives a familiarity, it gives a name to the face, face to the name, right? I think that did magic. So I think organizations I'm going to like harp on this part again, that organization needs to get into a culture of experimentation, because the important part here is that your customer needs are constantly changing, their behaviors are constantly changing, the mechanics of you to be able to reach out to them. For example, we always had celebrities as influencers, but today we have so many AI agents who are basically influencers,
Right.
right? I don't know, yesterday, did you forward, or I was looking at one video in China. One person basically created his digital twin. Okay.
I saw that.
And they are basically selling these household products. It's a e-commerce thing, okay, where you call them and they kind of sell it. So they basically trained this digital twin with the whole lot of product categories, right? They gave some 6,000 pictures of that man, so that if this happens, how will that man react? What will be the gesture of this man? And interestingly, this digital twin was on the call for 6.5 hours. Okay. And it was constantly real time responding to the answers as if that original person would do. And can you guess in that 6.5 hours how much of sale that agent did? Digital twin did? He did sale for $7.7 million.
Mhm. I think Alan Turing would be rolling around in his grave if he hears this. But
So I'm saying, like things are mind blowingly changing around us.
mind blowing, actually.
Yeah, somebody was telling me the other day. Now you should be. I was talking to one gentleman who's a CMO in one of the organizations. He said, I can very clearly see the future. The future is you are an entrepreneur and you have a team of agents who's working with you. You probably are not going to have so many employees. All you're going to have is a team of agents.
But speaking of that, there is a very interesting Bruce Willis movie that was released like 10 or 12 years back, where they talk about a world where you don't go to work. There is a digital self of yours, a digital twin
Hmm.
that goes to work. And everybody who comes to office is a digital twin. But you are sitting in your home looking at them and telling them what to do. And they're doing, sitting on the computer and working and doing
Yeah,
stuff.
something
So
like this digital twin selling the
absolutely.
commodities.
Absolutely. So they've already come up with a movie like that. And I think we are now in an age where we are seeing it happening.
Correct.
So one of the questions that I have been personally struggling with, and I kind of asked somebody yesterday also. So in this AI first world, uh, some say, I mean, it's a hearsay more so, but people are saying that we are drifting away from customer needs to what the model capabilities can deliver, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
our product is no longer a function of what the customer needs. Uh,
Hmm.
Our requirements or a product requirements are a function of what the model is capable of doing. So
Hmm.
when the product specs are being written or it's being discussed, that what is it that you are not talking about what the end customer requires, but you're
Hmm.
talking about what this model can deliver, which is a
Hmm.
very wrong approach, you ask me. But again, having said that, it's already happening. So
Hmm.
in this world, how if something like this is happening, how do you fix this? And why is it happening in the first place? What really changed?
Okay. See, one thing which is probably my point of view is that it is not a new phenomena, right? Because not everything is always driven from only from customer needs. Because if that would have been the case, we probably wouldn't have cars, we wouldn't have iPhones, like how Henry Ford says, I will still continue to build faster horses rather than a car, right? Or iPhone wouldn't have come, or probably a drone wouldn't have come. So the way I see it is that yes, you always cannot like look for a hammer, take a hammer and look for a nail. But I think we really have to look at it that in a lot of cases, it is our customers' behavior, customer needs that drives innovations.
Right.
But especially if it is a technology innovation, a lot of times it comes out from that and we figure out, okay, what does it mean for for which particular segment, for which particular industry can we really look? I mean, look at one of the most popular examples over there is Google Glass, right?
Yeah.
They came up, it worked in defense sector, it worked in healthcare sector, they found, but in a B2C kind of thing, it didn't work. But now, one decade later, we have Ray-Ban coming up with some limited functionality, a better design, and they've been able to find the adoption, right? So I do believe that this kind of a transformation that we are looking at has to be a combination of technology innovation as well as driven from the customer needs, right? So it has that kind of a balance we have always seen and we will continue to see.
Now let's move a little bit towards your core specialization, that is to empower and train PMs, right? That's something that you have been doing and very close to your heart, I understand. So I think from an AI fluency 101 standpoint, Uh, what do you think should be the minimum viable understanding of AI a PM in today's world should have if they were to
Mm,
stay relevant?
yeah. See, I think the most important thing here is you need to fundamentally understand the how does the AI stack even looks like, right? Because today, for example, the compute is at a very different level. The kind of infra that you need, you are talking about libraries which need to help you with the ethical aspects.
Yeah,
You need multiple libraries. We are all in a how do I say, in a agent mode where there are multiple agents doing different things. So what does it mean from a interoperability, from an open source perspective? So just having that blueprint of how does a AI stack looks like, what are the components of that, how is it different from a non-traditional traditional thing. I think that's the starting point. The second thing which I say is that, again, as I said, you don't need to know, okay, how does a random forest works or how does a regression model works, but you need to understand that what are some of the principles. For example, what is the difference between, let's say, a neural network and machine learning,
right.
right? So it's like the ABCDs. Before you go and jump into sentences, you at least need to have a broader understanding of what does that mean, right? That's the second part of it. And the third part of it, and this is something I again want to say, right? I think we are we as a PM maximize the value that we bring to the table is not by deeply understanding, okay, is it doing, feedback, what do you say, is it constantly learning from the feedbacks or not? But our strength lies in the fact to be able to marry the technology to the use case that we are looking to solve. So everything in that paradigm, whether it is about evaluating the right use case, mapping it to the right technology, designing it in a way where you are able to explain the behavior of your product, where you are able to build transparency and trust with the user, build effective feedback loop so that the model or the product is constantly learning through various interventions, ability to be able to outline what defines success for this particular product, how are we constantly doing on that metric, what is the new way of evaluating this product, most important thing, how do I define the costing and the ROI? I think those are the play, and any kind of domain expertise, any kind of contextual to the use case, whatever is the expertise that a product manager can bring on. I think you still don't need to go and understand, okay, how does a RAG works. It is good to know, it is nice to know, but if you do not know, it's okay, right? That is where you play the trump card of your strength of being a collaborator, being a communicator, and leverage the partnership that you have with your ML engineer to give you the suggestion,
Right.
right? So that is very important. So you need to continue to ace in terms of managing your stakeholders. I think one of the biggest challenge, I'll tell you sort of the multiple, as of now, I'm coaching three mid-level, mid to senior product managers. And the biggest challenge that they have is the magical expectations from their leaders, where they say, okay, we have got an AI, we have got the talent, we have got the budget. Now let's do the magic. It doesn't happen. If you are looking at 10x of output, you need to give it that much of time. So, managing the expectations of senior leaders, constantly keeping them aware, that is where a product manager has a role to play. Because an engineer, an ML engineer, a data scientist is deep into the this thing of terrain of figuring out, okay, how do I solve the problem? But between what problem to solve and how to solve, there is a lot to be done, right? That's where a product manager needs to these things. And while they need to know, they need to have a technology flair, but they need to also understand what AI can do, what AI cannot do, and that is where governance, policies, sustainability, ethical, responsible. I think those are the play areas where a product manager has a lot of work to do.
I think one of the things that nobody's talking about these days, and I'm reading a lot on these, is nobody's talking about the economics of artificial intelligence, right? I
Yeah,
mean, nobody's talking about monetization. Nobody's talking about how we can make money from our product, right? Because people
correct,
are
correct.
so seemingly obsessed with the tech part. People are so seemingly obsessed with what the tech can do and all. There are hard questions because see, every business is supposed to, create wealth, right? I mean, So the objective of every business is to create wealth. But if that is the objective, then why is nobody talking about how you can monetize your product and who will pay for your product? Which again brings us to the distribution part where we spoke about discovering your
Correct,
and
correct.
all that, right? So what really went wrong, in the last 3 years that now nobody's talking about monetization? Yes, there are outliers like Windsurf, there are outliers like Cursor that made 100 million ARR and all that. But those are just outliers. A majority of
Mm,
AI companies are struggling to make their ends meet because it's a very compute heavy environment, as you said.
correct.
You need a lot of money on compute. You need a lot of money to fund, to finance your OPEX, mostly comprising of wages to hire ML engineers and site reliability engineers and all. So why is it that nobody's talking about it, or people just are willingly ignoring that hard topic? Or when do you think, or have you heard lately in your circle monetization part, or how do you crack the monetization problem as far as AI products are concerned?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, right? And probably if I can just give you a couple of parallels here, Saurabh, right?
So
So see, when with the advent of SaaS products,
right,
PLG did not come on day one.
yeah,
PLG came in after we saw that okay, the product was able to build, there was adoption, people started talking about DAO, MAO, and all that, and then we said that okay, we can build flywheels within here to start monetization,
so
right? With AI products, we still haven't reached that milestone, right? Now, so one of the things, for example, in my training, which we really, really spend a lot of time is costing and defining the ROI. What is the, are you saying that you'll be able to start leveraging your ROI within 2 years, 3 years? How soon can you start making money? Right? So, number one, I think the unknowns, because see, we still haven't gone into a phase of optimization yet. Of course, with DeepSeek and all, we figured out that there are ways to
yeah,
reduce the cost and all that. I think we are still in what we call as the exploration phase. We still haven't gone to the optimization phase.
right,
Now, that is one part. The second part I would say is that I think AI also has these, sections where building something has probably a larger likelihood of quickly monetizing. For example, the Nvidias of the world definitely started much earlier. You had the Cursor or the Windsurf and all that,
yeah,
who saw that opportunity within the application layer as to how they can build something in order to empower a particular things.
yeah,
But now, if you ask me, with so many of them, Bolt, Replit, Lovable, all of them doing the same thing, the market is already getting commoditized,
yeah,
right? One of them does slightly one thing better, so incrementally doing something better is not going to really help you,
so
right? So I would say there are pockets within this overall AI stack where people have found opportunities and they are able to do monetization, whereas there are pockets where there are still so many unknowns. The products are still failing a lot, right? For example, if you look at the IBM Watson cancer thing, it ran for 6 years and eventually they shelved it,
yeah,
right? So I think a lot of companies today, or the organizations, as you rightly said, most of the large enterprise organizations are still focusing only on efficiency optimization, cost reduction.
yeah,
They are not even talking about how I can generate new revenue streams.
mhm,
They are probably looking at low hanging fruits like, okay, does it help me to improve the NPS? Does it help me to improve the customer support experience? Very few companies have actually said that, you know what, I'm going to start new offerings, brand new revenue streams. Very few companies have been able to do that. I think ServiceNow is one of the outliers which has been already posting some huge revenue chunks from their brand new offerings. So I think it is a matter of time. It is a matter of the technology getting more matured, but I think we'll get there. But I do believe that with AI coming in to be able to, leverage so much from the data, I think it has given a much bigger stage for organizations to be able to experiment, find their sweet spot, and probably churn out these new monetization streams and distribution channels. I think it is a matter of time.
right, right. I think I was recently using this product management simulator called Go Practice. I think which is something that
Mhm.
Ron Ellis has created. I think so that you feel as if you are already inside an organization as a PM.
Oh,
If you're
okay.
inside that simulator, you would probably have a CEO, a CPO, or all those folks there. All the characters are
Oh,
defined, and they would
okay.
ask you as a new PM that we want you to do this and all. So you kind of get a feel of how it would actually feel like being a product manager of a new company and doing the stuff. So that's how you learn. So they believe that
Okay.
the experiential thing will actually help you learn. Very interesting concept. But so as I entered as an AI PM, as a new AI PM to one of the organizations, I was tasked with a job of so my manager came and told me that, hey, you know what, we want you to be an AI PM in the next 6 months, right? So whatever you have, wrap it up in the next 6 months because we are coming up with a very different organization strategy and a product strategy. We are going to move towards creating AI products. And I felt that that is actually a very real situation where your management can come any day and say, in 3 months, I want you to become an AI PM. And if you can't do that, time for you to find another job, right? So if there be a case like that, and you had to groom and mentor a person, a product manager who comes to you with this particular problem, what would you advise them and how would you mentor them in terms of what do they need to do over the next 3 or 6 months to make them equipped to take this new role of an AI?
Hmm. Right. So actually, I actually saw one of the PMs doing this where he or she was kind of given the charge saying that do it, and this person suddenly, started just knocking every possible door to say, guys, how do you do it? How do you do it?
Right,
Right.
right, right,
That is the approach that he took. But if I have to take that approach with one of my mentees, I would have a slightly different approach, right? See, it is a reality that AI is huge, but at the same time, we really also have to see that AI is yet another technology, right? Now, if I have to do that, I think some of the things which I earlier spoke about, one track which I will ask my mentee is to start reading, start learning, start doing hands on, roll up their sleeves and start building things, right? That's number one. Fundamental things. Number two is when you are saying that you are going to change your AI first strategy, you are going to bring in new aspects. I think it is more important to dip your toes, dip your fingers with your leadership to understand what is in their mind. Because you are not going to build something which is 180-degree different than what your organization is doing, right? It has to be very aligned to it, right? That's a very important thing. So, and this is something AI or no AI, I have always done it, right? Whenever my leadership, I feel, for example, I remember when one of the organizations I was working, we were told that crypto leader we have to become. What does that it mean to become that crypto leader? So you have to start like unpacking these things like an onion. First of all, you have to understand what is the vision that your leader has. You have to understand, because if an organization is kind of, let's say, changing its posture and it is saying that I'm going to become AI first, product is just one of the functions which is going to change. What are some of the other functions are doing? Can I check with other product leaders within the organization? Can I check with program? Can I check with tech? What are they doing? Because I am not going to operate in a silo. I cannot say, okay, you know what, I have been told AI first strategy, let me go and talk to the customer, what do they need, and I'm going to come back on that. It has to, there are these multiple missiles that you have to shoot, and all of them have to happen in tandem. So first of all is you have to start able to speak that language, understand that fundamental, so that you can actually have a productive conversation with people to whom you are expected to talk. So you need to upskill yourself.
right.
Number two, you need to look at the broader function. You need to speak to your leaders. You need to speak to your peers to kind of, just internalize it. What does that mean? What does it mean for my product? Do I need to kill my product? Do I need to bring in new features within my product? What does it mean for my segment?
Yeah,
Today, do I have data which tells my customers that, if I do this, then my customers. So, are there those signals of low hanging fruits which I kind of first go and attack, right?
yeah,
Which will give me some green shoots, which will tell me, am I on the right track or not? So, you have to start with that POC mindset, look at the data, look at things more holistically, right? So, that will be the second thing. And the most important thing, like any 0 to 1, you have to look what your peers are doing because everybody wants to stay relevant, right? So you need to constantly look at what are your peers doing. Start taking up some, I would say, minor bets, maybe some major bets. But the most important thing is, do you have the right kind of talent within the team to
right.
support you? Do you have those ML engineers? Do you need to build versus buy? Right? So I would say AI or no AI, Saurabh, in these kind of uncertainties, one should always go back to the first principles thinking. Break it down. What does it mean for my user? What does it mean for the market? Is there a market big enough?
Right.
What can this technology really do? What is proven? What is not proven? I'll give you one example. This is one of the organizations where I was working for, and there was something which we wanted to do around OCR, and we did not have the right kind of talent in house. So we partnered with a startup. Okay. Now, at that point of time, the OCR solutions were not great. The best accuracy, so these guys created the data. I remember these guys coming and telling me, Malti, we have got like 88% accuracy. I was like, wow, that sounds like really good. But please remember, this was the data that they created on their own. Uske upar, which is clean data.
Synthetic data.
Yeah, synthetic data. And then we managed to get some amount of data to them. From 88%, within a week, we came down to 56%. Because that's the reality,
I agree.
right? So I think going with a very open mindset, ready to be failed, but the only way to move is to move forward. I think that is the approach that I'm doing. And, continuously make a plan. It is okay. Socializes, talk about it, learn it, ask for help. Those are the things which I always tell my mentees to kind of embrace.
Now, having said that, I think it would also be fair to talk a little bit about the evolving role of product leaders. Now, we're already part of a lot of these product leader forums. So as much as AI comes as an enigma to a lot of junior folks like PMs and senior PMs and principal PMs, it is also an equal amount of enigma for a lot of product leaders. So somebody being a director suddenly, I remember reading this book where Satya Nadella came and told his team one fine day that, hey, you know what, we are going to become an AI and cloud company.
Hmm.
So none of the folks understood what he meant actually, right? But the time it took them to understand where Microsoft was heading, from a Steve Ballmer work culture point of view to a very different organization, which is now going to be an AI and cloud company and all. They had to first create that model for themselves before they could build
Correct.
products for the entire world, right?
Correct.
So in the context of that, if a product leader suddenly sees from the board, saying that, hey, we are going to become an AI company, right? You have to adapt and ensure that we become an AI company from top to bottom.
Hmm.
It comes as a shock to him, right? And he kind of takes his own sweet time to recover from it. But when he does, he figures out, he's still trying to figure out in his brain that what is it that he has to do. So for product leaders like them who I have met a lot in the last few years, uh, they're also equally confused. What would be your word of advice to them as to how they can adapt and the way of working? How can they adapt to that new way of working and incorporate AI in everything?
Yeah. See, first of all, I think I love the book Hit Refresh about which you're talking about, because I think that's a great, great playbook for any kind of transformative things, right? Because these kind of things don't happen
Yeah,
in one day or one week.
yeah,
They are like very layered,
sure.
multiple years, multiple people. So it's a huge reference playbook that I would say. And for any product leader, first of all, I will be surprised. A good product leader would not wait for his or her leader to come and tell this to them. Ideally, they should be an igniting factor, somebody who's तीली का काम कर रहा है कि भैया हम क्या कर रहे हैं इसमें, right? A good product leader should be doing that. And I think in this kind of a thing, chaos, confusion is good. Because when you are confused, you are giving work to your brain, you're trying to figure out some clarity, right? So it's a good sign. But I think just as I said earlier, even for product leaders, I think I'm going to go to the first principles thinking, right? That break it down. What does it mean for my organization? What does it mean for my team? I think one thing which I would probably additionally do here, I'll tell you one example. I was speaking to a principal product manager a few weeks back, and this guy is a non-techie, okay, and he's working on some very initial POCs in his team, and he says the best set of people for me to learn and figure out what needs to be done is the most fresh junior person whom we have hired from the university, because they are already trained for AIML. They are already trained for this technology, right? Whereas a lot of people who are already there, they are not yet trained. We don't have that kind of a talent, right?
Yeah.
So I would say this is a great way where a product leader can now step down, come back to, talk to the Gen Zs, talk to those younger generation to understand, it could be a huge, a great way for them to get reverse mentored and to embrace what is happening around that. So I think, again, for a product leader, because here you have a team which is looking up to you to tell you, what you have to do, right? So I think being open about that all of us are in this together, this is what the directions. I think the idea here is not to further confuse your team, but just being transparent that we are going through this kind of a transformation. Here again, some of one of the questions which you and I spoke about, top down plus bottom up.
Yeah.
See, your leaders will give you a direction. For example, if I'm a associate director or I'm a director, I have some people above me who will give me a sense of direction that this is where we are heading. They're not going to leave me in a lurch and saying that, okay, you figure it out. They will sell, you figure it out for your portfolio. But at least there'll be a sense of direction. So I have to take a hook from that. I have to take a hook from this, my team. And then that is where I think my job as a product leader happens, where I'm able to mash up the two, look around me. Again, I will go back to what I said for the product managers also. What are other product leaders doing? What does it make sense? Reach out to the community. What are other people in similar things? What are the different things they are trying to do? Try to do as much as outside in as much as possible, and then try to harmonize that to your organization. Because see, again, there is a reality, Saurabh, that while we all want to make change as fast as possible, we only have so much of resources.
Yeah.
For one of the startups, we made a fantastic AI roadmap. And eventually, after the calibrations and everything, 90% of the roadmap went below the carpet. Because the reality is that everything costs money and you do not know enough about it. So the idea is that how can you quickly get started rather than just talking? So a bias for action, trying to find as much clarity as you can and not waiting for that perfect information to be available. I think those are the things that a product leader needs to, embrace and move on.
Right. So those are all the hard questions. Now, in order to make this session a little more spicy and interesting and entertaining, we decided to come up with a set of rapid fire questions for you, just like
Okay.
Coffee with Karan. And the idea is that you don't have to think about it. You just have to answer whatever comes to your mind, right? So
Okay.
here
Bring
I
it
go
on.
with your 5 questions. First being one AI tool that you cannot live without right now.
Claude.
A PM skill you think is underrated.
First principles thinking.
A recent product launch you admire and why.
Chat GPT 5, even though I don't know, I don't want to comment on what the product can do, but I was just looking at the buzz around me. People are doing watch parties and stuff like that. And they made it free. By the time they launched it, it was already available with all their partners. I think that was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Your boldest prediction for AI in products.
Um, Full stack PM.
So I think it will also be nice if you can just explain and what full stack PM is for the benefit of the folks.
Sure. So, see, a lot of people hate this word full stack PM.
Yeah.
But if you ask me, I think we are in the era where it is a reality that product managers have to be builders, right? So that means you do not only know the business side of things, but you also know the data side of things. You also know the technology side of things. You also know the customer side of things. So pretty much you need to stack up all your skills and you should be able to turn around and show the results, right? If you have an idea, you should be able to quickly build a prototype. You should be able to quickly build a dashboard. You should be able to tell the story very, very effectively. That's what I meant.
One question that ChatGPT furnished, which was also something I wanted to ask you in the first place. So I
Uh-huh.
think that's where we think alike. But if somehow we create a time machine and send you back in time 25 years back to meet your 25-year-old self, right?
Okay.
What would be your one piece of advice to your 25-year-old self in how she can optimize her career going further?
Okay, I think I'll have two. Okay,
Sure,
one is
sure.
that I think, and probably this is a slightly more a woman thing, but I have been extremely self-critical of myself, right? No matter how hard I work, if I don't get enough appreciation, I tend to be much more self-critical. So I think one thing I'll change is tell myself 25 and by and say that be kind to yourself. You're going to do fairly okay. That is going to be number one. Number two, I started my career as a faculty at NIIT. That's where I studied, and that's where I started. 6 months into it, and I hated teaching. And look at it, 25 years later, life has come full circle. So I will say, don't be so, anti about it. You are going to land here again.
No, no, true, very true. I got 43 in my computer science paper in class 12, and my father did not foresee a possible or plausible future for me. But here, 25 years later, I am still in computer science field doing something or the other. But one last piece of question before we conclude this. What would be your final piece of advice to all the PMs, across? Because I see that somehow we are emulating whatever's happening in the valley, right? We blindly
Hmm.
emulate whatever happens in the valley, but most of it is not relevant to us in terms of the
Correct.
businesses we are in, right? I mean, so if you were a PM growing up in India in these times, working with a company, right? And what would basically be that one piece of advice that would transform his or her life?
I think what you said is absolutely right, right? I mean, we are emulating a lot. It's high time we write our own literature,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So I think one piece of advice which I definitely have is that number one, uh, look around yourself. There are enough problem around ourselves, problems which nobody else is solving. Waste segregation. You know, how can we bring more civic sense to us as a demography,
Yeah.
right? So I would say before just copy pasting and solving for just the Indian demographics of Bharat, look for more challenging problems to solve. Look for problems nobody else has dared to solve. I think you will find more and plenty. And probably people are willing to pay for those problems to be solved, right? So that would be my request, I would say, not even advice, request to the next wave of product managers.
I personally believe that women are the best product managers. They don't need to learn product management at all because having multitasking done at their tips for them and doing multitasking for ages without any issues, which males like us struggle to do on a daily basis. So they're quintessentially the best product managers ever. But I think to conclude it, I would say that Malti Madam has done a commendable job all these years for empowering a lot of women who wanted to get into products. She's part of a lot of forums, women in product. In fact, the hashtag LinkedIn hashtag women in product basically, comes from her endeavors in trying to get women to products and all that. And then because of her, a lot of women are part of products. I was recently, very privileged to be part of a gathering that happened in Lucknow, which she had basically asked me to be a part of it, and I was able to gather some women. And it's very good to see that even women in Lucknow are planning to get into the product space. A lot of women approach me and ask me about product, which is a mighty surprise for me. But having said that, I think, ma'am, it was a pleasure having you and listening to you, and we would love to have you over and over again. If it came to me, I would make you sit here for 5 hours and just listen to you without even asking a single question. But it was indeed a pleasure and an honor for you to spare out time for us. And I hope this podcast will reach out to as many people as possible and help them understand a few things that they're not able to understand. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Saurabh. Pleasure is all mine, and it has always been. You are like that one scholar who will always have one book name, one anecdote, or a author's name references. So I'm a lot of times so amazed that how do you manage to keep so much and bring out the right example at the right time. So thank you again.
I'm
I
like an AI learning from women like you as to how to keep all of these things. Nothing special on my part, but thank you so much for saying those
Yeah,
things.
yeah. No, no, it is definitely coming from a, zone of passion. So thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for having me. It was definitely a pleasure, chatting up with you, and especially if it is about product,
Yeah.
technology and chat, I'm always up for it.